Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Chewing the Crust. I'm afraid this week I've made a mistake and I forgot to switch on my microphone. This means that the audio of mine is not great. Now that's typical because Josh is a audio and visual expert. So unfortunately I made myself look a real dillybonk. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode.
The Pie Eating Man's Guide to a Healthy Mind is now out. It's available on Amazon. You just have to search for The Pie Eating Man's Guide to a Healthy Mind. Or you can contact me directly if you'd like a signed copy. It's pieeatingman@outlook.com. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Chewing the Crust. Today on Chewing the Crust, I'm joined by a man who has turned the art of conversation into a powerful tool for connection and change. Josh Troche is the founder of Pedal Stomper Productions, a company that helps people and businesses tell their stories through podcasting, video, and photography. He's worked with everybody from Congress people to CEOs, and yet he still managed to squeeze me in as well. So, his heart is just as firmly rooted in helping the nervous beginner find their voice as in front of a microphone or a camera. And he's a man who believes his life is made up of a number of life pivots as opposed to one defining moment. Josh has lived through 5 careers, built his own business, and champions mental health, as well as the simple idea that you should always leave people better than you found them. And I can't wait to get into this conversation. Now, Josh, I don't know what you've watched of mine. I know you're a very busy person. I know you have lots of podcasts to watch, and I would imagine some get more tedious than others, possibly mine. But what you may or may not be aware of is before anybody comes on my, or as anybody comes on my podcast, I do a little poem for them.
Oh no, I've been anxious to hear this.
Okay, well, it's terrible about you, so you really don't want to be anxious.
No, oh no, I am all about that. Throw it all at me. I love it.
Okay, so here goes. He plants the trees he'll never shade. Through stories told, new strengths are made. From nerves to pride, each voice set free, a stomp of truth, a legacy. From trucks to cameras, 5 lives combined, each pivot shaping a sharper mind. He builds a stage where stories belong, a life of service to make others strong. Welcome to Chewing the Crust.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I mean that's touching. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I never really knew how it felt until I went on Jason Stone, who we've both spoken to in the past. He did one for me last week. So that was the first time I've had that happen. So that was very sweet of him, but also I got to feel what it feels like, and it was really nice. So I was quite pleased I've been doing it.
Yeah, oh no, it's beautiful. I'm so glad you do that.
I was feeling a little bit silly. No, I don't know if it's OTT, but I just think it's my thing now. So
It's funny because in so many ways, I think it is a man thing that so many of us don't know how to celebrate wins. We don't know how to receive kind words, because so much, and I don't want to say so much as expected of us, but there is a baseline of just do your job, shut up, and continue on with your life. And when we hear something like that, it's touching. I read something a few weeks ago that most men, the first time they receive flowers is on their casket. And that's at home. I look at and listen to stuff like that, and I'm like, wow, yeah, no, that most of us don't. And so when we hear stuff like that, it's really tough to hear. But when you realize the great place that it comes from, when you say that, it's amazing. So yeah, I'm so glad you do that. That's one of the reasons why I was excited to come on.
that's nice. Well, it's interesting because I think those crossovers come about a lot. When I met Jason the other week when I was on his podcast, and with what you're saying, all of that is toxic masculinity. You know, it's all mental health related. We've been indoctrinated into believing that we can't have a more tender side. We can't celebrate things overtly. I think, like I said to Jason, I think the Americans are better. Certainly, the American men are better at celebrating their own successes than people from the UK. I think UK blokes like to be the underdog. We like to be the grr, we came second, but that's because you cheated, rather than woohoo, yeehaw, like you are in America.
It's funny. I see a split in America that way. Because there's obviously, if you turn on television, there are sports stars that just, they celebrate everything, and there's a lot of people, and it's overt, especially in the media, I think. But when you look at John Q. Public, I think it's kind of different, and it's funny. I used to play soccer at a pretty high level, football for you, obviously,
Proper
and
game, yeah.
yeah, of course. And I was mainly a goalkeeper, but I would occasionally come out on the field during like rec ball, like we'd play co-ed or something like that. And like there was a time, there's like 4 minutes left in the game. It was tied. I scored the game-winning goal. I'm like, yeah. And I just go trotting back to the half field line, like, okay, let's get this over with. And there's many of us that just don't know how to celebrate those things.
But I think sometimes there's something cool in being quite modest about your celebration. I think in the
I
UK
agree.
that's something we quite, particularly in things like football, where if you play for play against the team you used to play for, we sort of have a bit of a thing over here where generally players won't celebrate out of respect unless they've left on bad terms and all of those kind of things. So
Correct. No, I see it as, and you see the true leaders, the first person that they like leaders, true leaders, they look for teammates to celebrate with. Whereas you see others, they go running by themselves, and the true leaders are the ones that you see that like they look for the person like, hey, you just passed that to me, thank you.
yeah, without the team, I'm nobody sort of thing.
Right.
I've got all sorts of questions for you. And for people who I know we've given a bit of an introduction, but your industry is very much involved in podcasting and broadcasting and um, helping people to be more comfortable in front of the camera and all of those kind of things. So there's massive pressure on me today. Although there isn't, I don't behave like that. You get what you see with me. I think you probably understood that from when we've spoken in the past. Apart from the purple light behind me. I have a purple light behind me simply because I saw other podcasters had a purple light behind them. It's not, and it does look better. I don't know why, but that is the only sole reason I have a purple light behind me is because I'm like, oh, loads of other people have purple lights behind them, so I'm going to do that.
It fits you. It truly does. I mean, look, if it was a weird red light or something else, it wouldn't fit. It just fits you.
Yeah, it's not coming off my shirt for anyone who is going to say that when I see them.
Yeah, it's not the glow off the shirt. Nope.
No, no, no. You grew up in uh, quite a big town. I don't even know if it's a city, Akron, in Ohio, um, with loving but sheltered parents. You've described it as. How do you think your childhood growing up in that environment has shaped who you are today?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's funny. Akron's known as the rubber capital of the world and still is today. Companies like Goodyear, Firestone, BF Goodrich were all based in Akron at one point in time, and Goodyear is still here. So yeah, I was born, raised about 30 minutes outside of Akron in a very rural community. And yeah, so sheltered, and I became very self-sufficient. I had my sister and she was 3 years older than me. We didn't always have the same interests. Imagine that. We didn't always see things eye to eye, as siblings often do not. Part of learning how to deal with life is learning how to fight with your siblings. And
Hell yeah.
we did a fair bit of that. But to me, the like growing up rural and everything like that, I became very self-sufficient. I am very much happy on my own. I ride motorcycles, and typically I've even found, like, when I ride my motorcycle, I there, you see the big groups of 100 or 200 motorcycles go down the road, and I'm like, as soon as I see that, I'm headed the other direction. I truly enjoy my time by myself, and the positives to that is I became self-sufficient, and I learned how to figure things out on my own. The negative to that was, socially, I had a very difficult time, partially because just how I'm wired, but I didn't have terribly many social interactions either. So and I've always felt what makes you good at one thing makes you terrible at another. We typically find people that are good at math aren't that good at English. If you're athletic, you typically may not be as book smart, so to say. There's a balance to many
A
things.
yin to every yang.
Exactly. And like I said, I feel like it's what makes us good in one thing makes us bad at another. It took me a lot of years of kind of finding myself and figuring out how I could turn my thought process into my superpower. Whereas before, kind of the way my thought process was, and the fact that, like I said, I was kind of sheltered, made it difficult for me to engage with others. I had to be like, okay, how can I try and flip this script? So obviously, like, I don't have much of a problem talking to people now.
Uh, did it make you competitive?
I don't know if that is what made me competitive. I've always, and I don't know if some of it's generational. I mean, I'm 47. A lot of us were kind of the tail end of the generation that we weren't allowed to lose. Losing or messing up just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's part of it. I've heard this a couple of times. So many people enjoy winning. Um, I don't really enjoy it. Like, going off of the celebration piece that we talked about, I don't really enjoy winning that much, but I really hate losing. I really hate losing.
That's interesting. I wonder if I don't like losing, but I don't think I mind losing, but I love playing,
Yes.
whatever it is. I know people nowadays sort of have a bit of a problem with it's not the winning, it's the taking part. But for me, it absolutely is. I love, I'm part of my nerdiness and part of my mental health management. I meet with some friends and we play board games. Um, and you would think that the whole reason to sit and play board games is to win. And obviously I try and win, but they are generally better at it than me. They've done it for years and years and they know the sort of science and the mechanics of all the different games. They remember all the rules, whereas I always forget them. Um, but I just love the camaraderie that goes with it and the leg pulling and the occasional mistake that means someone can slip in and take all the points. And but if I win, that's great. If I don't win, I'm really not bothered. And I wonder if that's a similar thing. But I don't think I mind losing. I think I did when I was younger.
I may have a different philosophy on that for you, a different angle on that.
Go for it.
I have found in many cases, especially as I have gotten older, so many of us are missing that camaraderie, missing those occasions. So, am I allowed to swear a little bit on this?
Yeah,
Wonderful. Who gives a shit about the game? This is
absolutely.
about hanging out with your friends. So the
Oh yeah.
games, and I have found in so many cases with some of my friends, it's not about what we're doing. It's about who we're doing it with. And if we find the right people to do stuff with, then it doesn't matter what we're doing. Board games can be a great reason for people to get together, because the thing that I like about them, and we play them at my parents' house all the time, because it is a reason to sit around and have a laugh and to do things. There's a networking event that I've suggested here, and for business networking, that parallels that. It's mini golf,
Yeah.
because, and what we would do is we would pick the people you play mini golf with, because that makes you engage with three other people, and inevitably something entertaining is going to happen that is going to get people talking and laughing. And I can see it in a board game too.
And I think also these things generally, if they're a little bit less serious, like mini golf is less serious golf, isn't it? I mean, it's not really. they're a great leveler. So it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're a child, whether you're elderly, what your physical capabilities are, provided you're able to turn up and play the board game or do the mini golf. It's a great leveler. And actually, like you say, it's an excuse to spend time together. It's an equivalent to drinking. I mean, in the UK, drinking is the automatic go-to for people to get together. Well, I don't drink. I gave up drinking last August, but I'll still go drinking with my mates, and it's still funny. And and actually, I've always been the silliest anyway. So they sort of catch me up when they get enough beers in them, then they're at my level of silliness. So it doesn't make a great deal of difference. But you're right. It's about it. I think one of the things that I learned from driving lessons, and I'm still not very good at it. I always thought I didn't have time for driving lessons, so I didn't learn to drive till I was about 22. Um, and I learned from that. Of course, I had time to put an hour a week aside to go for a driving lesson, or an hour and a half, or whatever it was. And the same is so for those social events. You think, oh, I don't have time. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. So you either organize it well in advance, so you don't do it, or you make it regular. But that interaction is so vastly important with people who you can let what's left of your hair down with.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, the interaction piece of that I like. And I've actually been intentional over the past year or so. And it's not every time, because once again, sometimes I do like my alone time. The motorcycles are a great way for me to connect with people. And it's not out on the road. It's occasionally they need maintenance. Something needs an oil change, needs a chain lubed, needs tires changed. I will text one or two of my friends and be like, hey, I'm going to be in the garage for the next 4 or 5 hours if you want to stop by. And probably 1 out of 3 times someone stops by and I'm half as productive as I wanted to be. And I walk out of the garage feeling 10 times better than if I had just spent the afternoon in there getting stuff done. So yeah, it's around something.
Interestingly, do you know, in the same way that you had your theory on the board gaming, one of the reasons that I reckon that is good for you and whoever you're with, they say that not being face to face with somebody to talk about your difficulties or your daily issues, you're far more likely to be open if you're not stood face to face. So if you're walking along side to side, or if you're under a bike and somebody's over you with a coffee in their hand, there's a lot more comfort in being open about your scenario that day because you're not sort of eye to eye.
I have heard something. It was on Chris Williamson's podcast called Modern Wisdom. Now I haven't fact checked this myself, so I'll preface it with that. But he talked about what was called in Australia the Shed Project, and they saw declining mental health in men, and so they would literally set up like these community sheds where men could go to fix things. And they said, like, they found in studies that when you look at women at parties and when you look at how women talk to each other, their feet are pointed towards each other. When you look at men, our feet are pointed typically in the same direction when we're talking with each other. And it basically, the Shed Project, what it was guys getting together in a shed, and inevitably that leads to them talking about their problems with a broken down lawnmower as their therapist.
We've got the same in the UK. We have men in sheds here. They're all over the place. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
big thing. But yeah, it's that common interest that brings you
exactly.
together. But the subject matter doesn't have to remain on the common interest, does it? So
No,
yeah,
getting dirt under your fingernails just is a manly thing. And it's just like,
yeah.
look, if I can, and I mean, plus you grab a hold of a wrench and you're going to pull on it as hard as you can. Yes, those are healthy things.
I was also looking at Akron on a map, and this is something that I find in massively in the US compared to here. How do you find anywhere in a city in America? Because it's all blocks, and I mean Akron is probably the most blocky place I've ever seen in my entire. It just looks like a chessboard. How do you tell the difference between one street and another?
Akron, thankfully, is not that large. It's almost walkable from one end to the other. Now, the area
Okay.
is not, but it's what's interesting is we still have some hilly country here, so it is blocky compared to what you're used to. if you go any further west, I mean, it gets very blocky and very flat. Now, we have a fair bit of elevation here, but one of the things that I like to talk about with this is I am in an absolutely amazing location. I have 2 acres for my home. I
Are you
can be
still in
in,
Akron?
I'm just outside of Akron. So I can
Okay,
be
yeah.
downtown at the baseball stadium in 12 minutes. Akron
Wow.
has a zoo. I can be there in about 9 minutes, and it's a wonderful little zoo. We in fact go there for dinner sometimes because we're members of the zoo. We can walk in for free. We walk in, we walk around. But Lake
Get some
Erie is
bananas.
right. Lake Erie is 35 minutes from me. So I can be in one of the 5 Great Lakes in 35 minutes. I can be in downtown Cleveland in 30 minutes, which Cleveland's a substantial city. I've got
Yeah.
Akron 10 to 12 minutes away from me. I can be in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in about 40, 45 minutes if I want to take the motorcycle there. We've got hill country. We've got flat country. We have a beautiful national park about 20 minutes from our home. I mean, this area, some people complain about the weather, but to me, we've got all 4 seasons. We don't have the best of anything. We don't have the Grand Canyon. We don't have this, that, or the other. We have amazing everything. And that's why I truly love it.
That's great. And I mean, it's not dissimilar from where I am in that we've got what we call the North Yorkshire Moors Plus. We've got the city of York, but we're in I'm in a small town of about 40,000 people. So, but we're on the coast. So, in the same way as you've got Lake Erie, I can walk, well, 5 minutes and I'm at sea. It's ice cold and not necessarily you wouldn't go in it, but it is wonderful and it's wonderful to look at and get the fresh air and all of those kind of things. So I do appreciate the value of that. Is it a sought after place to live in Ohio?
Is it a what?
Sought after place to live,
I don't know what you mean by
popular
that.
place.
Oh, it's interesting. So Ohio is on a bit of a resurgence as a whole. Ohio's considered part of the Rust Belt, is
Right.
what it is. So as we were Detroit, where Ford, GM, Chrysler, they're all based in Detroit. That's about 3 hours from here is all. So,
Yeah.
and with Cleveland being on the lakeshore, we obviously shipping was huge. So a lot of cars used to be made in this area. And a ton of steel was made in this area. Andrew Carnegie basically kind of built Pittsburgh, and like Bethlehem Steel is a couple hours from here is all. When steel started to leave, when cars started to leave this area really, I mean, Cleveland, which is the nearest big city, is down like from its peak about like 30% in terms of population. But there is a resurgence of technology coming back into this area. And we're starting to see things really like pick up in that way. In the same sense, Ohio, like right near us, is kind of known as a medical hub. I don't know. I believe they have a few things over in Europe and the UK now. There's the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is based here in Cleveland, Ohio, and we have some of the most world-renowned healthcare specialties right here in Ohio, which is very cool. And it does attract people, and it's starting to attract more. We are starting to see the population grow again, which is really good to see. Part of the reason for that, though, is because it shrank, and economically, that made it very inexpensive to be here too.
No, like you say, it's ebb and flow, isn't it? So there's one or the other. But yeah, really nice.
Yeah.
And the other question to ask you on the subject of motorbikes is in the UK, motorcyclists all nod their heads at each other when they pass one another. Do you do that in America? Every
There's
motorcyclist acknowledges each other.
We do. There are different ways to do it. Like I give a subtle like wave. There's certain groups, like they always say, you'll meet the nicest people on a Honda. And like there's people on like Honda Goldwings. If you see them, they will practically fall off their bike trying to wave to you. There is the Harley Davidson crowd, and they always just have to act cool. So they'll give you like
Yeah.
this like low hand, like 2-wheel, like hey, I see you, but I'm going to act like I don't type of thing. But yeah, no, we all acknowledge each other. And there's another crowd that does it here in the States too, is people that drive Jeeps. They will wave to each other. And we, of course, we all make fun of them for it. But yes, they do
It's
that.
bugs here.
Oh, I can see
I
that.
think it's
Yeah.
bugs. Yeah.
Yep.
And also Volkswagen vans, but yeah, but the motorcyclists here all nod their heads at each other.
Yeah. No, we acknowledge each other, whether it's a wave. I mean, if you're pulling in the clutch and give a head nod, people understand. They're like, I see you.
Nice, like it. My friend once told me that when you look back at your life, and this is where the podcast came from. When you look back at your life, you'll be able to put your finger on 3, 4, 5 occasions in your life where you can see that your life changed forever at that point. And I know that you have said that you're the sum of the parts of your life. That said, you must be able to look back, particularly looking at your careers that you've had, because you've moved through, and there is a theme. I can see the theme is sales and presentation almost. But talk me through that, because I am very risk averse, and whilst I'm very passionate, and I think people probably think who know me a little bit probably think I'm not risk averse, probably think I'm a risk taker, but I'm not at all. But when I'm passionate about something, I will push and push and push, and it will almost push at the borders of my risk taking. But to go through the sections of career that you've had, there must be points at which you've had to jump off a cliff.
Yes. And sometimes it was a push.
Okay.
Is I believe the right way to put it is being so like growing up, I was brought up, you go to college and you get a job in an office and that's how you live your life. And for me, I didn't think that was going to be a fit for day one. I mean, I did not I could do well in school when I really tried, but I hated it. So I didn't necessarily do all that well. I took 1 year of college, dropped out, was like, nope, definitely not for me. I did end up going back and at least getting my associates later, but so I found a job that I did enjoy. It was in the automotive industry. It was a sales and technical assistance rep for a company called Summit Racing, and I did that for 10 years. And it was, once again, it was safe. My parents are pretty risk averse. And so, yeah, it was my dad's very risk averse, I would say. And, but that job was safe. I was getting a paycheck every week. I did well at it. And, but yeah, it was the paycheck every week. But after a while, I realized like I want more from life, and I wasn't going to be able to advance through the company. I spent much, like many young men, I spent much of my early career. I was right a lot, but there's a difference between being right and being effective. And I was right many times at the cost of being effective. And that hampered my career at that company. So I took a risk on another job that was with a transmission parts. They remanufactured some automotive transmission parts. And I was to take over one of their locations. They had some stores all throughout the U.S. And it was about, they gave me a week's worth of training. They flew me out to Tennessee, had a week's worth of training, which wasn't near enough. And then came back, and I was at my new facility for about 3 days before I thought, uh-oh, this ain't going to last. I took inventory of what was there, and that was really far off. And it was, I believe it was 9 or 10 months later, they closed that facility and said, yep, sorry, this didn't work. You're on your own. And that was a point for me, because that was really, really tough. That was tough to take. I didn't necessarily feel like I had personally failed. I knew I'd been set up for failure in that. I knew what it would take to put this back together, and it was more than I was not, I don't want to say capable of doing, but even allowed to do. And when I got fired, it was initially that, what the hell just happened? um, and that was kind of that push off the cliff. And I guess I'm going to start looking for a job. I enjoyed the little bit of vacation.
Where was your self-esteem then? Because that's a difficult thing to pick yourself up and dust yourself off from, isn't it?
For me at that point in time, frankly, it wasn't. I'm pretty good at taking situations like that and detaching emotionally from them and saying, well, why the hell did this happen? And I mean, I knew, like I said, 2 weeks after I took that job, I knew how this was going to end. We're staving off the inevitable. We're biding our time. You're watching the time bomb. You don't know when both hands reach 12, but you know they're rotating around in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that wasn't that difficult for me. It was during 2008 2009 economic downturn, and I was 2.5 months later able to find another job, and I thought, well, shoot, I guess I survived that. Was it devastating to a certain extent at the time? Sure, but I'm like, okay, I survived this. We're good. We made it through this. We're okay. So that kind of made me realize that maybe there's a little more toughness there, and maybe there's that type of failure isn't the end of the world.
I think that's a good lesson to learn out. But you must be about 30 then.
Yeah, right in that range. Yep.
It's a nice age range to learn. Not that you can just make mistakes and get it wrong, but at least you are capable enough to overcome things and also to know what's important. I think that's a useful age to learn that.
100%. The other thing was too, is I was glad it happened at that point because, I mean, let's all face it, in our early 20s, we get a paycheck and we just hand it to someone else. Whether it be for I mean, your significant other, whether it be at me at that point in time, it was motorcycles and cars. It's in your early 20s, you don't keep a paycheck. You just pass it through. Once you hit 30, then you're typically established enough that you've like, okay, well, I can fall back on both dollars I have in my bank account.
I thought I mean, I'm 46. I thought it happened at 47. Just saying.
So yeah, to me, I was secure enough that those 2 months didn't drown me, so to say. So yeah, it's that was a point where I recognized, okay, and I figured out how I could market myself. I then went to work for a company that I guess I would say the owners were just not nice people. They treated their people extremely poorly. And I'm like, I was there for a while. That was the first time I ever really felt like work stress, where I was like, wow, this place. And I realized how places can get to people. I knew I could find another job if I needed to, but I didn't really want to. But the stress that they just put on me was insane. And I'm like, why? After a while, I'm like, why the hell am I still here? I decided while I was there, I had friends. I'd always loved farms. And I don't know if it was as much as I love farms and farming as I love tractors. I'm 47, and I am still a 9-year-old at heart.
I think we all are.
Yeah, I still have toy motorcycles and tractors on my desk at home. So I ended up working in agriculture, and I sold grain handling equipment, and I truly enjoyed it. I was traveling. My girlfriend at the time, we lived together, didn't like the fact that I was on the road. I mean, 3/4 of the year. In terms of the working time, I was gone 3 weeks a month, and I can understand her being upset about that. And I came, and there was a local company that wanted to hire me, and I knew it wasn't a good fit. I'm not a religious gentleman. This company was very religious, and I thought, we'll be fine. We were not fine. So I was there for about 2.5, 3 years, and they ended up terminating me again. And so that's the second time in 5, 6 jobs that I had been terminated. And I thought, once again, I knew I wasn't a fit there, and I knew I was once again just hanging on for. I could see the clock on the wall. So once again, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like I was struggling to keep my head above water with him. I just definitely was not a fit. And when I left there, my dad and I were doing some stock trading, and I thought, well, let's try this. And so I took a year to try the trading. And the realization that I came to with that was, it's funny, in business, I'm known as a fairly unemotional person. When it comes to my money, I get way too emotionally invested to be able to trade it well. So I'm like, oh, it's down half a point, sell. And then it goes up 10 points. And I'm like, well, you idiot. So I would get far too emotionally invested in my money to be able to trade the way I needed to. So I'm like, that's not it. And that's when I got into trucking and rediscovered my love for video, of which was kind of a side passion thing for me. I mean, I've got like every other YouTube person on the planet has embarrassing videos that they recorded with their friends doing dumb things 15, 18 years ago. Some of them are dumber than others. Yeah, from there is when I found the passion for video. And I was basically the operations and marketing manager for 5 semi-truck dealerships. At that point, I decided, let's take the jump and do it ourselves. Because I had learned enough, and I'm like, I am not getting younger. And I enjoyed some of the work, but I hated who I worked for. And I realized that working for myself and being able to make sure that other people didn't feel that the way I felt about that owner, I want to make sure people don't feel that way about me. And that is between basically being an operations and marketing manager of 5 semi-truck dealerships and owning your own photo and video company and podcast company, the pay is very different. And I say it's very different because financially, the numbers are wildly different, but the satisfaction is also wildly different too. So that's, once again, there's a scale here. If you're getting a lot of satisfaction, you don't need as much of the green stuff. I still need some of the green stuff. But it's making sure that scale is balanced has been a big thing for me.
But I do think, I mean, it goes without saying, really, but the more you earn, the bigger the pound of flesh the person who's paying you wants from you. Um, but I do think there's I was lucky enough to learn at a relatively early age, in my early 20s, the value of being happy in your workplace. And you're right, you can't just do what you want if it doesn't pay the rent or if it doesn't cover the mortgage. But that said, you should at least try. If you're lucky enough to find a job that you love to do, then it doesn't have to feel like a job, does it? So that's where your skills relating to visual and audio came from, then, working in the trucking industry and selling those vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah, and it started with that, and then I thought, boy, I really enjoy this video stuff, and I started to do just one or two things to help the community. People like, hey, we see what you do. Are you willing to do this on a volunteer thing? And I'm like, sure. And that's when I started to get other people's stories. And that's when I realized it's the stories that I love and it's the people that I love. Granted, don't get me wrong, I love getting flashy footage. The day that I realized that I had an actual business, I was getting paid to hang out of the back of a minivan filming a Dodge Viper running around a racetrack. And I'm like, they're paying me for this. Holy cow. They're paying me to do this. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's nice. But I still think sometimes, when things like that happen, because I reading some of the things you've said and seeing some of your interviews when you talk about some of the people you've worked with, I absolutely get that. But you've still got to have a level of confidence and a level of ability to take a risk to say, right, I'm going to do this. When you're filming that Dodge Viper, I would just be thinking, pinch me, this has got to end sometime, rather than amazing, I'm going to jump and do this.
It's funny. I don't want to say confidence has never been an issue for me, but I either have a lot of it or none of it. It's either I'm like, yep, this is it. And I believe that kind of goes back to where I said I was right, but not necessarily effective. I have a tough time with some gray area. So if I feel like I can do something, boy, get out of my way. I am going to do it. But if I'm like, that's out of my wheelhouse, I am going to run from it like a scared chicken.
And has that ever been to your detriment? You know, when you think I can do this, so I'm going to go and get it. Has that ever bitten you on the ass?
Oh, sure. There's been times, I mean, it's so funny. I'm very direct with people. And it was funny. So it was I teach a podcasting class at a local college, and the college had a congresswoman so a national congresswoman. This is someone that speaks on the world stage in the studio. And I like the president of the school is there in the one seat and she's in the other seat. And we're running low on time because what we're doing is going to go live. And there's a bunch of people around talking. And I literally just barge through and I'm like, hi, we need to get the mic set up. We need to do this, that, and the other. And the school president is like, Josh, introduce yourself, relax. And I'm like, no, I'm just here to do one job. And so the fact that I don't have some of those levels in between in terms of how to handle people, sometimes someone like that. And I mean, I don't do like pomp and circumstance. I don't do because I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense to me. And there's a bunch of people walking around like fawning over this congresswoman, and I'm just like, she put her pants on this morning same way I did, and I'm like, I need to find that middle ground in there.
Having done some stuff like that, and currently trying to do things like that at the moment, I do find that generally the people that you're dealing with are far less bothered about the pomp and ceremony than the people that work for the people. They're the ones that are the problem.
100%. Because when I uttered the words to her, I am here to make you look and sound your best. She's like, do what you need to. She was, and I mean, you can see everyone around her like, oh, and I'm like, nope, here's what it is. Just done.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I actually think those people generally find it quite refreshing not to be fawned upon, by I think they're like, oh, this person's saying it how it is. There are other people who you think you can see them looking right down the nose at you, but that is a challenge. It's an experience I've recently been quite deep up to my neck in. And because of my ADHD, I think, right, I'm just gonna go, and then I have to imagine, like, when you see on a cartoon somebody dies and the ghost comes out of their body. The person at the front is me getting up and going, right, I've got to go, and then there's me actually grabbing the ghost and pulling them back. The sort of brain thinking, no, you've just got to wait for the right time. Hang on. But
I love that.
It can be difficult to judge that well.
Very much so.
I think you kind of answered this, because one of the things that I find very comforting about you and speaking with you and watching you, and you probably know this because of what you do, you're a very calming influence. You're always come across very comfortable, very confident, but you're always very in control as well. What does Josh look like out of control?
It's interesting. It doesn't happen often. I have a great story about this. About 10 years ago, I was still playing soccer / football at a pretty good level. I'm in my mid 30s playing against 18-year-olds. And it was men and women. So and of course you realize when there's both men and women on the field, the men are just there. Many of them are just there to try and impress the women that are on the field. And this young kid just shoved me, and everyone was waiting for me to get up and just start throwing hands at the kid. And I stood up. I got about this far from his face, and I said, just plain super calm, I'm like, that was probably a bad idea, son. And everyone was like, that kid turned stone white.
Really?
And they said, because they're like, everyone expected you to get up and just sheer violence. And they're like, the total control that you had, they're like, was just scary. They're like, it was this level of control that was scary. And they're like, we realized that there was pure violence inside of you, but you had focused it. Now, what happens to me in really tense situations is I am the guy that gets very clear-headed, very calm. What do we need to do in order to A, make sure people are safe, B, get out of this in the best way we can, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About 2 to 3 hours later is when my brain goes, what the hell just happened? And that's when I start to melt down. It's later when everyone's gone home and everything's calm. We're all good. People are, whatever it is, people are safe. It's 2 or 3 hours later when my brain finally starts to process what happened, what all was involved, and the dangers that were there. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't good.
But what does that? How does that manifest then in your head? Are you beating yourself up? Are you, giving yourself a hard time, or are you having a panic?
It's very much anxiety and panic at that point. So the panic that I should have experienced in the situation is just delayed 2 or 3 hours. So in many cases now I realize, like, if I'm in a very intense situation, I realize I just need to be 2 or 3 hours later, I need to be in a situation where I can just let my guard down and just go.
Yeah. So that's probably not being on a motorbike.
Correct. Correct. And there's been scary things that have happened on the motorbike where I'm out, someone's pulled out in front of me, close call, whatever. And I'm okay with that until after I get home, and 2 or 3 hours later after I get off, then I'm like, whoa, that happened. So my brain takes things and puts them away for a few minutes and says, what's the problem? What do we need to solve for here? Let's solve for that. And we'll go ahead and all this anxiety and other stuff, we will put that in a bottle and we will let all the crazy out at once.
Interesting. You, like I say, you always come across as a calming influence of, like, everything's under control, and I would imagine that your sock drawer is really quite tidy.
No, it's a mess. It truly is right now, and but it irritates me. It really irritates me.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I can tell. You're a tidy sock drawer guy.
Yes.
Something I want to ask you, because it's about podcasting, but it's not really. Before my podcasts, or as I'm prepared, I have podcast ceremonies, and they're not really big ceremonies, but I always leave an hour before so I can set everything up, because this is my office and my sort of craft room and everything like that. So the bit you can see is the tidy bit. The other bit is the stuff that's like crammed up that you can't see. So I have to make some room. But weirdly, I always cut my hair. I always shave my head so that I'm tidy. But that's not weird. That's presentation. I generally wear
I do the
a
beard.
loud shirt. Yeah. Well, I generally wear a loud shirt unless it's something that I know is going to be heavy, and then I always wear a white t-shirt. But I always put aftershave on.
Well, you smell
What's that
nice.
about?
You smell
Well,
nice.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you what that's about.
Go on then.
You have to feel good about you in order to feel good about what you're doing. It's for you, it's that part of that tidiness routine. If you feel good about yourself, I mean, then it becomes so much easier to get on camera and talk. It's so many things that we think we're doing for other people, we're doing for ourselves. And it's funny. So I'm a weightlifter, and like everyone's like, oh, did you start weightlifting to get girls? And in kind of a way I did. Yes. And you know who I get the most compliments from?
Boys.
Correct. They're like, dude, nice effort in the gym. Way to go, man. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's those things that we think that we're doing for other people. I think we're often doing for ourselves. And to me, I think that's actually a really, really good thing. If we've got healthy habits like the aftershave, like the shaving the head, like the picking out the right shirt, tidying stuff up. If we've got healthy habits that we think we're doing because of other people, but we're really probably doing them for ourselves, that's still probably a really good thing.
Probably making me feel more comfortable so that I don't have to worry about those things. So I don't have to worry that you think I smell bad.
Right.
And I'm just in my comfortable place, because whilst I do have a list of questions, it would be foolish of me not to. Generally, it's quite natural the way the questions come. You know, once you've asked one or two, you get a feel and you start to ask questions. But yeah, because what I don't want to do, although I would have liked to have done when I was on your podcast, I don't want to ask you everything in this podcast of how to make my podcast better, because that's what you do for a living, and that's wrong. I'm not here. I'm here to learn about
No,
you.
we always give
But
advice.
but what I would have liked, I wanted more time to talk on your podcast. It was too short.
So it's funny with mine, we keep it a little bit shorter for a couple of reasons. There's, as you know, guests can often be very different in the way they talk, their ability to talk, all those things. The other thing that we've found, and it depends on like the subject matter, yours is really, it's getting to know people. It's getting to know and learn from people about life. That is a big, broader topic. You're not going to cover that in a 10 or 15 minute podcast. I'm covering something that's geared towards business owners. It's geared towards marketing people. They want actionable, quick information. Yours is just as much yours is one piece educational, but it's two pieces entertainment too. And those can work in very different ways. And to me, if it's an entertainment podcast the guests that you've had on have had interesting stories. And I mean, that to me is entertainment. So yeah, it's all about what it's geared towards, and what it's going to fit kind of dictates the time that's going to be involved with it.
And how does it feel for you when you take somebody who you see doing it wrong is not the right word, but I can't think of a better phrase to describe it. When you see somebody like the people you're talking about, or like somebody who perhaps was struggling in front of the camera, or struggling to seem natural, or achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve. I know you're going to say it just feels good, but genuinely, certainly the first time you got somebody to overcome some of those hurdles and you turn them round, it must feel great.
It's beyond great, even. It truly is. And to me, the way that I feel about it I've coached high school soccer. When you do stuff like that, it's very similar in the fact when you get someone to achieve something that they didn't even think they could get to that place. It's just like, holy cow, I just changed someone's life.
Mm.
And I know you may say that's maximizing this, but when you get someone the confidence to sit in front of a camera and just talk, and what I always tell people, like, there's some people that do monologue podcasts, and I always
Don't know
say,
how they do that.
yeah, it's tough because what's so difficult about it is you and I are having this dialogue back and forth. And you, like, when you tell a joke, if I would just sit there straight faced, you'd be like, okay, well, that didn't land. I need to adapt. When you're talking to a camera, you just got to hope. And you just got to hope that it's going to reach the right audience and the right people.
Yeah.
When I see some people that have, maybe they don't have the confidence they should. The worst group about this is women. They're like, oh, I don't like how I look, or I'm like, no one cares. Talk about good stuff. And there's a few women that I have worked with that have just amazing stories and talk about amazing stuff, that we have gotten to a point where I'm like, look, you actually present really, really well. Are you Elle McPherson? Are you Cindy Craw? No. But you've got so many more things, so many more tools, that you shouldn't just focus on this one thing. As men, we aren't as conscious about it, I don't think, overall. We still very much are. But we're like, when I work with men and like putting them on camera, and I'm like, dude, you look good. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you present well, you talk well, let's do this. They're like, oh, okay. Another dude told me I can do this. Awesome, let's go. Whereas women take a little more convincing in a lot of cases. But I mean, once you get people over that hump, it's getting them to realize what actually matters. It's huge.
And again, that presumably changes for every type of presentation that they are putting forward, what matters, going back to what you were saying before.
Yep. Yeah, it really does.
I think I think the reason I'd struggle with the monologue ones is that I'm so interesting. I just wouldn't be able to stop. My episodes would just be like hours and hours.
But see, this you could, and you know why I say you could is first off, I mean, when we talked on my podcast, you're an interesting guy, you're an entertaining guy. And the piece to that is you put a ton of research into talking, like you looked up where I'm at, you looked up what's around me, you looked at the road. I mean, for crying out loud, you looked at the roads around where I live. You've done your research. If you did that same amount of research for your monologue and planned that out, you'd be amazing at it.
I don't know, but well, it doesn't. It wouldn't happen because I'm not interested in it. That's the difference.
Now
I'm
I could see
interested
that
in
too.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to learn, and it's funny. You truly give people space, which is amazing, and it's one of the reasons why I was happy to come on. I've seen so many podcast hosts where they're like, "Hey, I'm going to ask a question, and you're going to talk for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to talk for 2.5 minutes," and it's like, no.
Well, I once went on a course in about. I was the world's worst person for finishing other people's sentences. Um,
Same.
and once upon a time, for, as you've said, wanting to be right, or at least not wanting to be wrong. And one of the biggest things I learned relatively early on is the value of being wrong. And actually, there's nothing to learn from being right. There's only stuff to learn when you got it wrong, and that it's brilliant. Um, Also, the value of saying sorry when you mucked, even if you haven't cocked up. If somebody's upset, if you say sorry, you can instantly start to build forward and fix things. If you don't ever say sorry, that just becomes a little bit of poison left in the scenario. Um, but yeah, so going back to finishing people's sentences, I went on this course, and it was a 3-day course, and it was fabulous. Um, and the first 2 days of it, I sat thinking, what a load of shit. What a load of woo-woo nonsense. I am going to go home after this, and I am just going to come away having learned nothing at all. I did everything. I played all the games and did all the things that they did. And then on day 3, the penny dropped. And my wife said, I've never been the same since. I did it, and it entirely changed me. They took me to pieces without me knowing. They rewired me and put me back together again as a far more tolerant, laid back, understanding person. But one of the greatest things that I got from that, and I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm better than I was, is one, listen to hear people, and two, letting the value of letting people finish what they say, because you just don't know what you think you know they're going to say. And that, particularly in this element of what I do, the podcasting stuff, people who listen to this, the 3 or 4 people who listen to this podcast, don't do that because they want to hear from me. They do it because they want to hear from you, and they want to hear from the other everyday person that is inspiring and has gone on to do inspiring things. So if I talk over you and finish your sentence, what's the point in that? It's absolutely pointless. And I actually, I do a little bit of research, but I don't do perhaps as much as I could. But it's because actually I want to learn today. Because if I know everything about you in advance, then I won't have the natural questions that come to me while we're talking. Because I might have learned about where you live, where you're from, and I'm interested in you, Josh, and I'm interested in the people that have been on. And part of the reason I look at where you live is because I've never been to the US, and that's interesting to me anyway. But things catch my attention, so I look at them, and then they're interesting. Anything that
Sure.
the fact that you've got a zoo, I will be looking that up tonight and looking up your zoo this evening for sure, because I love animals as well.
But once again, it's things like that are interesting. You're truly curious, and that's what makes your podcast good. I've found it's the same thing for me. It was funny. I used to listen to answer, and I used to just listen for the opportunity for me to pipe up and start screaming something. And once I started listening to people and what they actually had to say, I found I learned so much more. And I think some of that comes from, especially, it comes from an area of confidence. Because before, I thought I needed to show people that I was smart. I've since come to realize that I don't need to prove anything to anyone. If they think I'm stupid, that's their problem.
Yeah, I think I agree 100% with that. One of the subjects in my book is not comparing yourself with others, whether that's about smartness or whether it's about the door knocker that you've got on your front door. It doesn't matter. Well, if you have a nice car, there'll always be somebody with a nicer car, no matter what car you had. If you've got 100 quid in the bank, there'll always be somebody with £101. Look at you, concentrate on you. Don't worry about anybody else. Anybody who comes into your life, that's wonderful. And you can do that. And as they go out, you don't have to chase them, or you can if you want to, but be you and be real. And again, I think that perhaps is why I feel so comfortable when I am watching and listening to you. So it's not just your craft, which you are clearly very good at.
Thank you.
It's not just your understanding of depth of field and lighting and all of those kind of things. Um, I think your comfort with yourself is unconsciously what's the word? Comforting. Yeah, I think you unconsciously comfort the viewer or the listener with your comfort with yourself, if I can take a slice of that, if I can take an iota of what you do away with me from watching you, then that's a wonderful thing and the same for your clients, because I think that makes for more natural presentation and for more, I think the more natural that you are, not just because there's a phrase you could say, you could come across more naturally. Yes, you do come across natural, but it's not about coming across, it's about being natural. One could be fake.
It's interesting. I spent most of like my junior high and high school career being bullied relentlessly, and had a huge effect on me. And it was later in life when I finally was like, okay, well, I'm me. I'm doing just fine. And I was always looking outward for validation, for justification, I mean, it's the reason why, like, I was 21 years old and a normal crotch rocket wasn't good enough. I had to get the Italian one, because that was what was going to make me cool. Right. I know I was still a huge dork. I was just a huge dork with a very cool motorcycle. It's those types of things that I looked for, that outward validation and the problem is you can tell people that they need to find ways to just be comfortable with themselves. You can tell them that till they're blue in the face. Till you could be blue in the face, but there has to be that thing that clicks for them, that really makes it kind of stand out. To be honest, one of the things that really kind of made that click for me was I was in a long-term relationship. I think we were together for 7 or 8 years, and for like the last 2 or 3 of them, neither one of us was happy. We didn't hate each other. We weren't fighting. We weren't arguing. We just weren't happy. And she up and left. And I was destroyed by that for about a week and a half. And then all of a sudden I'm like, she did us both a huge favor. And then I'm like, holy cow. And through that process, I learned how to be like, look, dude, you got to be happy with yourself, because both of us were looking to the other one for happiness. And neither one of us was happy. So, of course, you've got 2 unhappy people doing unhappy things. So to me, it was me being able to find that inner confidence, that inner happiness. I always want to improve, but I'm okay.
It can be very difficult to see those situations for what they are as well, because it's a bit like when I've struggled with depression. Depression doesn't just happen. Yesterday I wasn't suppressed and today I am depressed. It creeps up on you and it becomes part of your life, as does uh, a relationship like that. It's not a destructive relationship. It's just not a positive one. And the the breaking down of a relationship like that is so expensive financially and so much hassle, and the splitting of who gets the fridge and who gets the fish tank. All of that is just, oh, can I be bothered? But surely it's going to get better after Christmas, or and I think sadly there are people out there that have an entire life of that, and that's one of the drivers for this podcast. Is there are people out there living a miserable life or just an unhappy life. And it could be that your entire circumstance could be wonderfully happy if you just flipped a switch or took a tablet or uh, moved house or stayed with all of the same people, stayed in the same job, just recognized it and tried to fix it rather than just going through that constant mundane unhappiness. Because life is just too short. And one of the things you mentioned after that relationship, Rod, you mentioned that she gave you a very valuable gift of time. And I was intrigued by what you meant by that.
Oh, I had time to kind of look at and analyze stuff. I mean, and I hadn't been in a space where I could do that before. So now I realized, like, she would be like, let's try and go places. And I'm like, these aren't interesting places to me. Well, now, and it was okay, we were doing something together, but now I had to figure out how to do some things on my own. And I had the time, so to say, at that point in time. I mean, now I'm a business owner. I have zero time. But at that point in time, to like figure out what I wanted and what I needed instead of trying to figure out what I think she wanted me to do, which typically wasn't what she wanted me to actually do. And so it was just that time to sit back and be like, okay, how do we need to rewire this? The thing that you alluded to there is so many people will sit in that unhappiness. And I sat in that unhappiness for so long because I had no clue what the hell was out there.
Yeah.
What does change bring? Change could make this even worse. If I change anything, it could get even worse. And so many people spend so much time catastrophizing on stuff like, okay, if I do anything, the worst thing is going to happen. And 99.999% of the time, a bad thing isn't even going to happen. So it enabled me to take the time to get out and take some of those risks and realize that, hey, if I'm going to be happy, it's on me. It's not on anyone else.
And I think you can manage those risks as well. You know, the 99.99% of the time. I mean, if somebody gave you that as an equation and said, put £1,000 on this, there's a 99.99% chance it's not going to work. Otherwise, it'll be fine. You'd put your money on it. But, and I know that's a little bit uh, glib and a bit more simple than it perhaps is always. But I think you can manage the risk and you can calculate it, even if it involves quite literally writing down the pros and cons and the benefits and the negatives. And not enough people do that and that's one of the things I put a lot in my book. I put worksheets in so that people can physically see it in front of them, because the flaws of not doing that could just be that you continue to have an unhappy life. And it just seems pointless to me.
The thing that I really want to allude to is like my motorcycle riding. People that don't ride motorcycles are like, it's dangerous. And they're at it, the way they present it to me is there is a very high likelihood that every time I walk out the door that I will not come back. And it's funny, I had a friend that would be like, I would never do a motorcycle, way too dangerous. And every time I showed up at his house on a motorcycle, I'd be like, hey, made it here again, didn't die. It's so funny because is there risk involved with it? Sure. Is it a higher risk than if I was in my minivan? Yes. But so many people are like, my favorite question is when people are like, motorcycle, aren't you afraid of dying on that thing? And I'm like, aren't you afraid of not living? And
Yeah.
people look at me like, oh, because the things that I have seen on my motorcycle far outweigh any risk that I have taken on it. I have been in places like I've gone down roads that I am pretty sure no one has gone down that week. I have been on top of hills where you can see for miles. I go places that you're just not going to go in a car. And to me, that little bit of risk, is it more than taking a car? Yes. Is it this much more? Sure. Is it this much? No, it's not a huge risk. So to me, it's worth it. But there's so many people that, once again, they stick inside their little bubble because they hear motorcycles are dangerous. When you look at the stats behind it, most motorcycle fatalities happen within the first 6 to 8 months of someone getting their license.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because my equivalent to that is scuba diving. People are the same about that, particularly if you scuba diving with sharks.
No thanks.
I adore scuba diving. There's nowhere I'd rather be. There is nowhere on the planet I would rather be than underwater, ideally with sharks, but not necessarily. I love scuba diving. 20, 30 meters down under the water. The wildlife down there is just breathtaking. You're cheating nature. You're seeing wildlife that when I was a kid, my mum's partner sailed in a converted fishing trawler, and he sailed from a place called Whitby, which is just north of where I live, and he sailed to Australia, and it's the journey that Captain Cook took, basically, and it took him a year with some other people, and it was my mum and him had not been together very long, but when I was growing up, I loved wildlife programs. I loved David Attenborough and all of those kind of things, and particularly marine life. And the a lot of people have an imaginary friend. I had an imaginary trip to Australia. So I would say when things came on the television, I saw that when I went to Australia, and my mum was like, "What? What are you talking about?" But there's loads of things that I saw when I went to Australia. I've still never been to Australia. I'd love to go, but that I dreamed of being a scuba diver, and people I knew had scuba dived at school, and then I went to university, and my closest friends all scuba dived, and I didn't, and I couldn't afford to. And then when sadly one of my grandparents passed away, she left me a little bit of money, and we go to Egypt quite regularly now. And I got my wife, myself, and my son all qualified as scuba divers out there, and it unlocked a world that of wildlife and magic and peace. And the other thing I didn't realize until I wrote my book was how important the breath work. People talk about breath work being important in wellness and all that kind of stuff. Well, scuba diving is all breath work and diving. So I couldn't getting down into those crystal blue waters, seeing those fish that are like every single color you can possibly imagine, seeing 7 foot sharks swim near you, so close you could touch them, and they're not bothered. They're just so peaceful and but again, people are like, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't be able to breathe." What do you mean you wouldn't be able to breathe? You've got a breathing apparatus in your mouth. It's as close. The other thing is, it's as close to flying as you can get because you're entirely in control of your where you are in the
Sure.
volume of water. It's just immense. But yeah, there's a risk involved, and like you said, you could get eaten by a shark, or you might have a malfunction with your equipment, but you manage it. All of it's about risk management, and I waited until I was 34 to get qualified. I've lost all of those years now where
Sure.
I can't go back and die.
Right.
So now I need to enjoy it and make the most of it. And that's the same with everything we do.
It's funny how when we get to a certain age, that really starts to hit home. That, I mean, the past 2 or 3 years, it's been, for me, shit, this is halfway over.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
don't go down that road.
no, it's frankly, it's a difficult thing to think about. And it's funny. I was talking with, I have a great story about someone the other day. Is this guy, I think he's 74 now. He runs the local butcher and bakery. Really well-known guy, great, phenomenal human being. And we were talking with this young woman about how as young men, we want to be old men. And when we're old men, we want to be young men. And he was talking about, he's like, I was 12 years old. He goes, I was at the corner store, and he goes, I had a quarter. And he goes, I bought myself a root beer. And he goes, I looked, I had 15 cents left. And he goes, the pinball machine only needed a dime. So he goes, I was getting ready to put my dime in the pinball machine. And he goes, I realized I had a quarter left. And he goes, so I bought a cigar. Or he had a nickel left. So he had 5 cents left, and he was able to buy a cigar. And he goes, so I was sitting there as a 12-year-old playing pinball with a cigar in my hand and a mug of suds. up on the machine. And it was so funny because when he mentioned that, I mentioned the same thing. I said, when I was younger, my senior year of high school, my last year of high school, I went to a vocational school that was a little bit further away. A bunch of us, we would wake up at like 5:15 in the morning. So that way I could leave at like 5:40, 5:50 in the morning. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, we would all meet at the donut shop with the 60 and 70-year-old, like old bearded, scraggly men. And we would sit there and drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, and eat donuts with the old men. So we could, at age 6 or 17, feel like old men. And it's funny how that kind of traverses just men in general.
Yeah, and now we are those old men. That's the other sad thing.
Looking at the young guys going, damn it, if I could be that age again.
Coming back to podcasting advice, what do you think is the question that nobody asks that everybody needs to ask themselves, at least?
Ooh, you mean as a host, or they should be asking their guest?
When they come and no, as a host. So when they come and see you and they say, I need to do this, or I need you to help me with this, what do you think? For God's sake, it's quite obvious you have to do this, but nobody sees it.
There's actually two of them, and they fit really closely together, is why I feel okay saying two questions. Who and why? Who is this for? You have to pick one person that this is targeted to. In your case, I mean, if you want to pick your target audience, look in the mirror. I mean, it's your target audience is you. It truly is. The other thing is that so many people miss is, why are you doing this? There's like, if you're doing it for brand recognition, then by golly, make sure the brand's in there. If you're doing it as marketing, and then make sure that it's a marketable thing. If you're doing it to learn about other people, make sure you're doing it to learn about other people. But you have to know why you're doing it, because if you don't know why you're doing it, it makes it pretty easy to get pod creep, is what I like to call it, is where your podcast starts over here and then suddenly becomes this type of thing, and then comes down over here and becomes that type of thing. If you know the purpose of your podcast, you now have a direction you can go with it.
That's really interesting, because a lot of people come to me who are certainly at the very beginning and said, you need to speak to this person. And I'll say, but what's their pivot? What's changed? What has? Yeah, I don't know what that is. And for me, that's quite important. Although I can see it diminishing, because so many people, everybody has a pivot. That's the beauty of what we do. Everybody has gone through something which changes. And I like to think that if the guest this week isn't your exact cup of tea, currently I don't know what next week's guest will be, or the one after. So it's genuinely interesting people that I come across or hear about that I want to speak to, and I ask. But yeah, that's interesting, because I think you're right. You also use, I've heard you use a term or terms, know, like, trust.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about know, like, trust, because I genuinely don't know what know, like, trust is.
It's very simple. If it is so much easier to buy something from someone if I know them, I like them, and I trust them. The way that became very apparent to me at one point in time was when I was at the semi-truck dealership. I self-admittedly a little bit of a germaphobe, and this gentleman just comes walking into my office. He's got like 5 days worth of potato chip grease on his shirt. Obviously a truck driver. He comes in, sits down. He's like, "Hey, Josh, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Who in the hell are you?" is what I'm thinking. I mean, once again, all the sirens are going off. Danger, danger, danger. And this guy's like, "Man," he goes, "I've watched all your videos. I've been real excited to come in and sit down and talk with you." And I'm like, this guy genuinely talked to me like he knew me. And that's when I realized how video can play into that, because he had watched all these videos. He knew my mannerisms. He knew my voice. He knew I was going to talk. He knew what I was going to say, to an extent, obviously. I mean, at least when it came to trucks. So you build this rapport with people as they start to get to know you via the video. And that's what makes videos so wonderful, because like podcasting, the audio side, you get to hear people, you get to know about them. Speech patterns are a huge thing, how people speak, whether it's intentional, whether it's whatever, like however they do that. But seeing them adds 3, 4, 5 other dimensions to it that you obviously know I'm animated because you've seen my hands flying around the whole time. I mean, if they
Yeah,
were
but I've also seen you very intentionally on all of your videos holding your hands on the desk. I've noticed that.
100%, because it's to make sure that I'm not that I'm looking attentive is and you're 100% right. It's very intentional, and it's practiced. It's well practiced. But that know, like, and trust piece is really, it's that people, they've gotten to know you via the video. And if they've watched more than one of them, they probably like you. And if you've shown up every week and you've talked about the same thing and you've shown that you're honest about things, well, now you've started to build trust. So, from a marketing and branding side of things, why we love podcasting in that, because it really allows you to build that. And once again, you don't have to spend as much time in the sales process, especially if you've got a longer sales cycle. You don't have to spend as much time in that sales process building those pillars, because you've already got them.
You see, for me, the only reason I would like my podcast to grow is because I actually do think the message is useful for people, and
I agree.
I'd like to share the message with as many people who can take advantage of it. And that's not me blowing my own trumpet, because it's not usually my message. I just find the people and the chalkboard that the questions are written on. And for me, the guests are the fireworks show, and I want to share as many inspirational tales that are from different worlds, backgrounds, or have a different outcome or a different starting point or a different middle point, so that as many people can associate with them and look at them and think, today's difficult, or yesterday was difficult, or tomorrow might be difficult. But this person has been through, you've been through job loss, you've been through, um, you know, relationship loss, and your story is not desperately dramatic. You, but but most people's lives are not desperately dramatic. But you've come through it, and you're a successful business person with a, who's inspiring. And I've had massively shocking stories on my podcast,
Yes, you
and
have.
and I desperately hope nobody has to go through those things. But if they do, or even if they come close, they can see that those people have still gone on to have a successful life and an inspiring life and a positive life. And I'm not very good at marketing, or what I do know is that I just want to keep hammering the gong, um, and hopefully at some point it will get somewhere. But I mean, I have had some very exciting developments just recently, but none of them have yet come to fruition, because I may have some particularly well-known people coming on the podcast at some point, which I expect will probably boost the podcast a little. I don't know. But there's also then, it's funny, I asked a question on a podcast forum only yesterday. I worry that, because I'm not interested in a famous person for the famous person's sake. They still have to have an interesting story, and anybody who does come on would have an interesting story. I would worry that there's a sellout to that, or people perceive it as a sellout. And I don't care, as you've said, what people think, but I would hate it to damage the podcast. But I've weighed that up and I've thought about it, and I don't think it will. I think it will only benefit. And I think the people who I am speaking with are as genuine as you. Therefore, that's what matters, and it should hopefully raise the profile. But it's your own business. Having had my own business in the past, and your own creation, they become very uh, important in your heart, and it can be very difficult to accept something new into it in case it doesn't quite work. But one of the things I'd be interested to know your thoughts on, in h- how important do you think the evolution of a podcast is? And by that I mean, is it important that someone does evolve their podcast, or does it, and can that be natural, or does it have to be forced, or do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I do. Um, this is why you need to establish your why first. If you have the podcast so you can have interesting conversations, does it need to evolve? Does it need to develop? No.
No, but does it matter if it does? That's the fear.
But see, that's the thing is if you know why you're doing the podcast, then that dictates how and if it needs to grow. To me, our world is changing faster and faster. I mean, when you look at the curve of technology, when you realize 150 years ago, people did not have hot showers. And now you and I are talking over what, a couple of thousand miles. You know what I mean? Like you may as well be in the next room. And 150 years ago, people did not have hot showers.
Josh, I am in the next room. Hooray!
So it's to me, it's the world is constantly changing. And does your podcast have to evolve? No. If you don't want it to, no, it doesn't have to. Now, the thing that I'm going to say that's going to 180 degrees oppose that, and I think fits better as an answer for you, the direct answer for you, is, yeah, it needs to evolve, but it's going to evolve on its own. Mother Nature forced evolution. Like, fish weren't like, you know what would be useful? Fins. How about we get fins? Like, the environment forced that evolution, not fish wanting fins. So that to me is you're going to see opportunities, and you're going to take some opportunities that may or may not work well for it. But as long as it needs to fulfill that why are you doing it? Because the stat that I always talk to people, and this is one that I say it seems like inevitably on any podcast that I've ever been on, I believe it's either 84 or 86% of podcasts do not make it past episode 15. And that's because the why isn't the right why for those people. And that to me is why the why is so important, because it will dictate, are you going to evolve? Do you want it? I want to grow this. That is why I'm doing this. I want to grow and I want to help more people. If that's why you're doing it, it's probably going to need to evolve to help more people and to reach that. Now, what I don't want you to think with that is when I say help more people, I don't want you to think help different people. There are a huge number of guys our age that want to hear these stories, that want to hear from other people about this. So don't think because I want a bigger audience, you need to broaden your audience.
I shouldn't go for the Disney audience.
Right. No. And it's so, I have a great story about this in the podcasting class I teach. There was a gentleman about our age, and we always talk. I tell people, typically your audience is you minus 10 years. Because it's typically someone younger that wants to hear about like your journeys, but in the same sense,
me plus 20.
Actually. It could be too, but in the same sense, there's not a big generational gap there. So we still speak the same language. A 20-year-old and a 60-year-old do not speak the same language. But it was hilarious. This gentleman was in his mid 40s like us. And I asked him, I'm like, so who's your target audience? And he goes, 70-year-old women. I'm like, what? Then I come to find out his podcast, he's going to be co-hosting it with his mother, who does poetry. And I'm like, this makes sense now. But typically, and it's so funny, I tell people, I'm like, this is going to be your target audience. It's your age all the way down to minus 10 years, because that's the people that want to hear and learn from you that you can associate with. Sometimes it's a few years older, but it typically trends a little bit younger. And when we tell people, they're like, no, I want to go for this audience. They will podcast for 4 or 5 months. They look at their audience and it is exactly who I said it was.
Do you think one of the biggest mistakes, because it's something I could have done, you think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is worrying about the kit?
Oh, look, gear is, everyone thinks about it. And I have my own theory on why. It's easy. What's going to make my podcast better? Well, I can ask better questions. I can learn to speak better. I can do things better, or I can spend $600 on a camera. let's get the camera. And the problem is that, and that's why people are so upset when they buy gear, because they're like, my podcast isn't any better. No, because can it make the video a little bit better? Yes. I mean, we've got $15,000 worth of cameras in here. If I'm still in it, we still have some bad podcasters. If someone comes in and talks like an idiot, I don't care how expensive the camera is, you're still going to sound like an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And something you did sort of go near, and it's probably a good point to nearly wind things up a little bit, but you tell me about the words of Scott Galloway, which I did squeeze into. I don't know if you noticed, but I tried to squeeze some of that into my poem at the beginning.
Oh, yes. I mean, for me, shoot, it was, and this kind of goes like sideways a little bit for me, but we'll go sideways and bring it back. My co-host of my other podcast, she refers to most mission statements as shitty wall art. And, which I love. She's a brilliant woman. She's like, most mission statements are shitty wall art. And I realized a couple of years ago that the more I did for my community, the more I did for people around me, the more I did to help other podcasters, the more successful we were. And that's where I arrived at success as a shared thing. And Scott Galloway talks too a lot about, and this is the old Chinese proverb of, you need to plant trees that you will never sit in the shade of. And people need to do things that are for the betterment of society as a whole. And you're going to benefit from that, but you need to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I don't really believe in karma and all of those things, but I do believe that if you're a good person and you try and do good things, generally that will be returned in kind somehow.
And to me, I feel like if you are a good person, if you do good things, you're going to attract other good people. And those other good people are going to do good things that you're probably going to be the beneficiary of. I've been very intentional about who I have spending my time with as of the past couple of years. And it has made a huge difference in not only my attitude, but how I do things and the opportunities that are around me.
Yeah. And I also think something that a lot of people overlook is that if you do try and do good things for good people, for the most part, not only will good things come back in some way, but they tend to come when you need them rather than when you don't need them. And I think that is something that is often undervalued, because when you're in your deepest, darkest issue, we had a house fire about 5 years ago. And there's a lady, and I'm going to name her because I adore her, and I will always be grateful to her. She's called Diane Breton. We had a house fire in the kitchen. My entire family were here, which is unusual. My eldest son and his partner. She was the first time she'd ever met us and stayed here. His fiance now. And we had this house fire. It was the kitchen, but it was bad. It was a problem. About 3 o'clock in the morning, the fire brigade turned up and blah, blah, blah. But all of that aside, so that's quite quite a roller coaster to go through. Fire brigade had to kick the door in because I'd locked myself out going to meet them, and I sat, and we had some garden chairs in our front garden, and because the door was broken down, I sat in the front garden wrapped up in jumpers and sleeping bags to keep warm, so that when the right time came, I could arrange for a locksmith to come, because I couldn't bring them at that time in the morning, really. And also I needed to take photographs for insurance. We had no electricity, so I couldn't do all of those things. Anyway, at about 7 o'clock, it had started to come light. And I went into our front room and I sort of put some cushions down to sleep on to try and, because I'd been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. The house was still full of smoke. Just as I was about to lay down, there was a knock on the door. And I went out, and my wife has a hair salon, and put something on social media to say, we're closed today.
Right.
And yeah, they'd all gone off to somewhere else. That's something I forgot to say. So I've been on my own since about 4 o'clock in the morning. My family had gone somewhere safe, but I was sat there protecting the hunt. Anyway, I went to the front door, and Diane was stood there, and she had a cup of tea and a bacon sandwich. And she was still in her pajamas, and she had seen the message, and she'd gone out and got me from a local shop a coffee and a bacon sandwich. And in my imagination, and I'm not a religious person either, in my imagination, when she was stood at that door with those things and said, "I brought you these. I heard what's gone on," she was glowing, a bit like this purple light behind me, but with a I was like, what a kind thing to do. And she's always said that she did it because we're kind people and we're not, and that has probably been one of the most vulnerable times I've ever, found myself. She must have read the message at, I don't know, 6:30, and it was about 7 o'clock, and she was on my doorstep with a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea. And it's just a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea, but it's not. It's that
Right.
whole package that in my darkest point and in that difficult period, she was kind enough to think of somebody else and make herself vulnerable in order to help us. And I'll never, ever be able to repay that properly. Um, but yeah, and I hope that's a good example of if you are kind and rather than people say, no, the one we always joke on, the one on Facebook, oh, what's up, love? What's the matter when someone says, oh, I've had a terrible day, but they don't
Right.
elaborate because they want
Right.
attention.
Vague booking.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, and I think the more of us that act in that manner and behave in that way to try and help other people, and as you say, leave a net benefit to the world.
I have an interesting story about that. I used to work I used to be on the board of directors for a charity that would help the homeless. And I also used to have a blog called Learning by Helping. And I used to walk dogs that were stuck in a shelter. And it seemed like every time I walked one of those dogs, I learned something. And so I would go home and write about it. And I did the same thing when I was working with the homeless. And I still remember this story. A friend of mine is like, these people just need to get a job. They just need to work. And what I found so interesting is the story that I found about, I still remember that as plain as day. It was a really cold snap in winter. In centigrade, it would probably be -10 to -15.
Wow.
Yes. And I ran into this gentleman, homeless. We were passing out coats, and I had talked with this guy before. And he's like, yeah, he goes, look, I got a job. And he was beaming. He was working at the local refuse transfer station. So what they do is they dump out the normal like residential garbage trucks, they compact it, they stick it in bigger trucks to haul it away. He's outside in -10, -15 degrees centigrade weather in like a leather jacket, maybe a sweatshirt and jeans. And he's like, I've been cold. And he's like, the wife and I, he goes, at night, he goes, we're okay because we're both in the sleeping bag in the tent. And he goes, but I get cold during the day. And he goes, during the day, he goes, she's been okay in the sleeping bag. But he goes, I get pretty cold during the day. Do you think we could get some coveralls? And at that moment, it was one of those things where I realized that people are different. Some people have different tools than other people had. The fact that he and his wife survived together and the fact that their relationship survived together in a tent in those conditions, the only thing that it gave me such a perspective on life and on what things mean and on the different tools people had. And I remember my buddy's dad saying, like, people just need to get out and work. And I'm thinking, I so wanted to say to him, do you think if you lived in a tent, your wife would still be there? What really matters? And that to me, it was a big lesson.
And it's what really matters on that day as well,
Yes.
because one day in 15 years they may be millionaires, and
Right.
what matters on that day might be different, but
Yep.
you've got to take everything day by day, and recovery from a difficult scenario has to be day by day as well. But yeah, that you showed your kindness there, because you not only did you offer to temperature in centigrade, but you knew the temperature in centigrade, which to me it's like translating something from English into Chinese to try and do the centigrade and Fahrenheit thing.
I like the metric system, so I use it whenever I
The
can.
British
So it
system.
was, but I knew that when I was going to say a temperature, I knew I needed to be in the right range for that.
Final important question, which I regularly forget to ask, and it's really, really important, is what pie filling is your favorite pie filling?
What you just said, it depends on the day, and it truly does. My mother makes an apple pie that is worth taking a bullet for. She also makes a pecan pie that is absolutely amazing. I'm going to say apple. I grew up across the street from an apple orchard, a beautiful apple orchard. It's still there. I still go back there to buy apples whenever I can. So when apples are in season, it's usually a good time to get mom to make an apple pie. And it is well worth the extra calories.
The other question then, have you ever had a savory pie?
No, I'd like to, but I know I need to, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the best. You see, that's what we have. We have savory pie. I know we've had this conversation. I think I spent about 20 minutes telling you about pies on your podcast.
We talked about that because I've never had something like that, and I should, because all the things that I love are there. It's just not.
I'm going to send you a recipe.
Oh, please do. Would love to try it.
Send you some recipes, and then, but only on the promise that one, you actually make one, because so far I've done this and somebody hasn't made one, Kristen. But also two, that you take a photograph of it and send it to me so I can share it on my socials.
My God, yes. No, I would. I mean, that's the whole reason to do that, other than I get to try the pie. But yeah, no, that's. Yeah. I am very much willing to send out social media fodder, because that, especially if, I mean, because the other thing is I typically am pretty good at following instructions, and I can typically do stuff like that. But there is a chance that I get distracted by something, and this could turn out to be a total nightmare. So I will send the photo, even if it turns out to be the total nightmare. If it looks like if I made it with a blender, I'll still send it.
The other thing that you have over there, and I have a friend who lives in Philadelphia area. No, Pennsylvania. It's Pennsylvania, yeah, Pennsylvania. Yeah. You have weird pizzas with no cheese on.
I won't mess with those. No. Pizza needs cheese. Pizza needs, it can be deep dish or flat crust. I don't care about those. Those are both really good. But yeah, it needs to have cheese and sauce on it. It's not a pizza.
Over near like Harrisburg, is it? Harrisburg?
Yes.
Which is sort of to the east of you. They have just like tomatoes on bread, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, why the hell are you doing this?
Yeah. And they go mad for them.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. So while you're here, let's have your links for people to be able to find you should they need you. Have you ever done any international podcast assistance?
I actually have, yes. I have worked with a motorcycle company that's based out of Austria.
Excellent. So that is an option. So any of the 4 people that watch this podcast, if they want that service.
I truly love, and it's one of the reasons why I enjoyed our conversations so much, just because I'm learning something about where other people live. And I mean, you're far enough away, it's different. And it's different enough we can still understand each other, even though you talk weird. So no, I would tell people, go to pedalstomperproductions.com. It's PEDAL. I used to race bicycles like Tour de France style, except much, much, much slower. That's where the name came from. Also, if you look me up on LinkedIn, I am on LinkedIn all the time. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast that I had with Mark, look up Podcasting Momentum. I asked him some questions about his podcasting journey. No, it is coming out from when we're recording this. It's coming out Monday. So that is what? It's coming out Monday, Monday the 29th. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So Monday the 29th, that'll be out on audio. It'll be out on the 30th on YouTube. So check that out. And because we had a good conversation.
I'm anticipating your subscriptions and numbers to skyrocket when that comes out.
I am anticipating the same thing.
I think the CEOs and the ambassadors that you will be dealing with will just be off the chain when they hear that I've been on.
I have no doubt. And so yeah, you can check out the Business Fix also too. That's that. If you have a business, we have some fun on that one.
Hey, well, what do you mean my accent's weird? My accent is how it should be. This is the proper English accent, by the way.
The weird talking one.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, by comparison to the English accent you're probably used to.
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, like we have the same thing here in the US. I mean, you hear some people in the deep South, you're like, what did you say? Yeah, it's cool how that works.
It's flipped here. We're kind of the deep south of the, even though we're in the north, we're seen as the yokels to the southerners.
I won't
Hence
hold it
the
against
beard
you.
and the bald head.
Sure.
I just don't wear dungarees though, or have a banjo.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. You didn't have to give your time to join me today, and one of the things I discussed with Jason is that this club that we're in, this podcasting club, it is a little bit like being a diver or a motorcyclist. You gain quite an unusual but strong bond with people when you do this.
Yes.
It's quite an intense relationship over a short space of time. And because I've got ADHD and because I have a thing where I meet somebody and I just think they're my best friend in the world. And then I meet them 20 years later and I can't understand why they don't remember the 5-minute conversation we had 20 years ago. But yeah, so I think a great deal of you, Josh. I really enjoy podcasts that I've seen of yours. I think what I admire in you, and you mentioned it, is that you seek to help other podcasters, even by just attending their podcast in your own time. You don't have to do that. You're not going to see a marked increase in people following you as a result of coming on my podcast, but I really am grateful. Time is precious, and kindness is everything. So you've done both of those things today, and I'm very grateful.
Look, thanks for having me on. To me, a conversation like this is time well spent. One of the things I love about podcasts, and I always tell this to people, is you do get that connection with people, because how often are you asking very intentional, deep questions of other people? You're not, unless it's on a podcast. And that's why it's one of the other reasons I love it. There's thousands of reasons why I love it. I'm honored to be on here and really appreciate it.
The other thing is you have a lovely voice, and when I release my audio book in the US, you can do the voiceover if that's all right.
I'm 100% game.
Excellent. And you've got the kit.
It's all here.
Right, thank you very much. So that was Josh Troche, a man who proves that storytelling is more than microphones and cameras. It's just about unlocking confidence, shaping perspectives, reminding us that every individual has a story worth hearing. From 5 careers to founding Pedal Stomper Productions, Josh's journey is a lesson in resilience, self-awareness, and giving back more than you take. If you'd like to follow his work, you can find him at Pedal Stomper Productions on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And as he says, let's try and leave people in a better place than we found them. And don't forget, my book, The Pie Eating Man's Guide to a Healthy Mind, is now out. It's available on Amazon. You just have to search for The Pie Eating Man's Guide to a Healthy Mind. Or you can contact me directly if you'd like a signed copy. It's pieeatingman@outlook.com. Thanks for listening to Chewing the Crust. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everybody else. Thank you very much.